In the framework, level and experience are managed by the entity core component that we have already seen in the entity video tutorial. Levels are used by the framework to define the progression of statistics and attributes for an entity, but we will be talking about this in the classes and progression video tutorial. Today instead we will be focusing on how levels and experience are related in the framework, how to level up an entity, and also how to assign experience to it. Okay, so in the entity core, we can see that we have a level and experience box, and here we have all the properties to set for regarding leveling, system, and experience. The first thing we want to talk about is the relationship that exists in between the level and current total experience. And in order to provide a better grasp on this, I think we should look at the hero experience growth formula. That is just the experience formula that defines how much experience is needed at each level in order to level up. So in the framework, there is the current total experience, that is the value that defines how much experience a certain entity currently has. And we can see from the formula that, for example, at level 1, in order to level up, the entity will need to get 100 experience points. At that point, the current total experience will not go back to 0, but will remain to 100, so that when the entity will get more experience and will eventually reach a current total experience level of 200, will level up again and will become level 3. And this goes on for all the levels that are defined by the max level int var assigned to the growth formula, up to when the level reaches the level 30. And in order to reach, in this case, with this very simple basic formula, to reach level 30, we'll need 2,900 current total experience. So the key points to remind are that the current total experience defines the experience that the entity gained throughout all the progression from level 1 up to the level that currently is, and is not reset to 0 at each level up. And therefore, when reading experience growth formulas, we have to keep in mind that each value is not doesn't mean the experience that have to get from 0 to level up, but instead is the current total experience value that has to reach at that certain point in order to level up again. So in this case, our entity, in order to level up, will have to get 100 experience at each level. Very well. Now we can come back to our player and we can assign the experience formula we have just seen here in experience formula for our player. And if we now change the level in this field here, for example, to 2, we see that also the current total experience changes. And the inspector is not allowing you to change the current total experience directly because it is more cumbersome, I would say, to change the level on the base of the current total experience rather than changing the level and then setting the current total experience. However, we can also change this, and if we go up to 30, we see that, as we have seen in the experience growth formula, the current total experience that we should have in order to be level 30 is 2,900. Now, there is a relationship in between like the maximum level for the entity and also the maximum level in the growth formula that we have seen here, that is calculated up to level 30. And it is important to have these two values coherent in order to not have problems. And by default, this is already implemented because, as you can see here, the int variable that is being used in the hero experience growth formula is the same that is referenced here. And so once again, you see that this utility, like having int variables as scriptable object, is providing a higher degree of decoupling and modularity, and still allowing you to perform one change only by changing this variable, and the change will reflect to all the components that are pointing to it. So, for example, at a certain point in your game, you may want to change the maximum level that now is currently set to 30, and this variable is coming along in the samples that are provided along with the package. So you will find them once you import the package here under examples, utils, player, max level. And if we now change this to 50, and we go back to our player, we will see that there will be a warning saying, well, maximum level 50 does not match the growth formula level 30. Well, because all the growth formulas, in order to be refreshed with the new value that we set, with the new value of the int variable, must be validated. And we have two options. Either we go and click on each growth formula here in the assets, and this will refresh immediately the values, but this can be quite annoying if you have already a lot of growth formulas. Or another handy tool that the framework provides, if we go under the tools menu, SOAP RPG framework, and validate all growth formulas, this will automatically recalculate all the values with the new maximum level that the formula may have for all the formulas that are found in your assets in your project. So I can click here, and voila, there we have a log saying growth formulas validated 30. And now you see that here we don't have anymore the warning, and also here is already updated. And this kind of calculation is made on the onValidate method, so therefore you either need to select the object or go with this utility tool that I provide to you. So anyway, I would always suggest you to actually validate all your growth formulas whenever you change the maximum level, that an int variable that changes the maximum level and that can be used in across your growth formulas. So anyway, now we can come back, and if we try to put, for example, now this to 40, we see that now in order to get to level 40 we need 3,900 experience, and we can go up to level 50. We cannot go above level 99 because there is no such a level allowed currently with this maximum level. I can also mention the fact that also for the level and the current total experience, you can also opt for using int variables also for them. Well, it is important, if you choose to do so, to not change the long variable directly of the current total experience, because the editor will not allow you is read-only if you use a constant. But when you choose to use a long variable, because maybe in your game you need to share the information about the current total experience as was for the maximum level with a long var, but in such a case it's very important to not directly change the value of the inside the long var, because it will still be managed automatically by the entity core component. However, for simplicity, for the sake of tutorial, we can just stick to this case, and in most cases you will just need constants are working fine in this case. And also, obviously, well, you can still opt to work the other way around with constants, but instead for maximum level, as we have seen, since growth formulas are relying on int variable, and also the level and experience component in your entity core are also want to define a maximum level, this is very comfortable instead to be using int variables in this case. Okay, next up we have the experience gain modifier. Through this parameter we can pass in a statistic, and what the framework will do is it will consider such statistic from the entity stats component of a certain entity in order to calculate how much extra experience shall be granted to the entity when it gains some experience points. So we can take into consideration the hero stats that we defined in the previous stats video tutorial, where we defined also an experience modifier statistic. So we can drag it and drop it here. And if here, for example, we will set something like 50, this will mean that our entity, our player will gain 50% extra experience every time he gathers some experience points. And now I can show you how to provide experience to an entity. So for now, let's bring this back to 0 for simplicity. And with the package, you also have available the exp source script. This script allows you to assign to a certain game object an amount of exp that can be harvested from an entity, and in order to get the experience points that are being offered from this source. So this can be, for example, either an enemy that when is killed drops some experience points, also a quest or a waypoint that once the player physically reaches such a waypoint gets the experience, or anything that comes up to your mind. And once that this experience source is harvested, will be not possible anymore to harvest it a second time, unless you manually from the code APIs re-enable it. But in most cases in video games, once you got the experience from one source, in general you don't get it a second time for quests, enemies that are killed, and so on. But if we come back to our player here, we can assign, I prepared a very simple script here that just considers an exp source, and when I press the button from the inspector, it will add to our entity the experience that the experience source is actually providing. So this, you can see that from an entity core, if we access to the getter property level, we have available the add exp method that is actually the public API that you can use whenever you want to assign experience to an entity. And as a parameter, you can pass a long value that represents the amount of experience points that you want to assign to such an entity. So if we enter in play mode, and we press this button, we will expect, well, we need to first drag this here, okay. We will expect that being the experience modifier 0, so no extra experience will be granted, and being 100 experience provided by this experience source, and if you remember, with this basic growth formula for the experience, we will level up once we reach 100 experience points. The final result that we expect is that our level will change from level 1 to level 2. So let's try it. Hop. And as you can see, we just warped to the level 2. We have now current total experience of 100. And if we try to press it one more time, nothing will happen, because the experience source has already been harvested and there is no more exp to get. Very well. Now we can try to do the same thing, like let's assign one set for all. Now we can try to assign, for example, a boost of 100%, so we get double experience from sources. So if we enter once again in the play mode, and being now level 1, we expect to get 200 experience points and to get to level 3 immediately. So we can try, and voila, we get level 3 with 200 experience points. Obviously, you can also get a negative boost in the experience that you get, but to do this, we probably have to first change our experience modifier so that the minimum value is no longer 0, or we either remove it or we can set it to, like, for example, we cannot earn a less than 90% less experience, so that is not 0 the experience we get. And if we come back here, we enter play mode, and we harvest, well, let's remember to set this, for example, to -50, we should now get only 50 experience points. And in fact, we are still level 1, but we have 50 experience points. Very well. Finally, there is one last parameter here, that is the on level up game event, but we will be skipping this for now because we will talk about game events in a separate video, the game events video tutorial. However, there is one last thing that I would like to show you. If we consider the experience growth formula that I showed you before, we could say that is kind of too simple, and almost no game has such a linear progression for the experience required to level up each time as the levels progress. In general, in RPGs, what you have is that as you level up, the amount of required experience increases. So, for example, from level 1 to reach level 2, you have to get 100 current total experience. But then, from level 2 to level 3, you have to get an extra 110 points, that is 10 points more before the experience that you had to get to level up at the previous level. And then for the next level, you will see that the amount of points required will be even more, and so on until the maximum level. So in order to recreate this kind of formula, so that there is a relationship, obviously, like in the amount of experience required, ignoring the current experience gained so far, there is a relationship that is taking the difference in between the current total experience that we have as soon as we reach, for example, level 3, and the current total experience that we got when we were level 2. So the difference of these two current total experiences are giving the actual required experience to pass from level 2 to level 3, that is in this case 110. And this is just like 10% more of the experience that was required to get from level 1 to level 2. And also here, from level 3 to level 4, you can see that 121 is once again 10% more the experience that was required to get from level 2 to level 3. So 110 plus 11. And in order to recreate such a formula with the framework, there is already one experience growth formula that is provided in the samples of the package. And if you analyze it, we see that, okay, at level 1, in order to get to level 2, we are asking the player to gather 100 experience points. Then, at level 2, and only for the level 2, we are requiring the player to, well, have the amount of experience that already had, because since we are, as I told you before, we are using the current total experience in this growth formula, so we still have to remind that at each level we have to take into consideration the experience that the player has got so far. So this first previous keyword is referring to the level of experience that he got in order to level up from level 1 to level 2, so 100. And now we want to say, okay, that now in order to get to level 3, he will have to get the same amount that he was required before, 100, but with an extra 10%. So this will be 100 plus 110, that is 210. And from level 3 onwards, we can simplify and calculate all the remaining values up to the maximum level, that is in case is 50, by saying, okay, I want the previous value, so the experience that the player acquired so far, plus the difference in between the previous value and the second previous value multiplied by 1.1. So the whole value plus an extra 10% as usual. So this is actually making the difference in between the value one level before with the value of 2 levels before. So if, for example, this is being calculated for level 5, it will previous minus 2 previous is 610 minus 464. And this difference, that is the experience required to level up from level 4 to level 5, is multiplied by 1.1. And with this you get this exponential growth formula that is actually what in RPG games defines that as long as you level up, it gets harder and harder and requires more time and grinding in order to further level up your hero.